Look, we got to answer one big question today, and you're going to have to look inside yourself and say, are you okay with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom getting absolutely punked this award season? What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce, and Zelda just lost its first Game of the Year award. And according to some journalists, they believe that this is going to be not an anomaly, but rather a trend. You see, today was the Golden Joystick Awards, and while Tears of the Kingdom won the Nintendo category, big whoop. Tears of the Kingdom wants to win the ultimate Game of the Year. It wants to win the overall Game of the Year. And I think many Nintendo fans feel like, wow, Tears of the Kingdom was a supreme step up from Breath of the Wild. They added so much innovation, so much creativity, so much flexibility, and so much scope and scale. If Breath of the Wild won, Tears of the Kingdom is almost a shoo-in. But that doesn't seem to be the case, my friends. And I feel like because Breath of the Wild won, Tears of the Kingdom is being overlooked, is being discarded, is being like, you already got your win, can't win twice. Is that fair? I'm going to read you a list of the games that were up for this Golden Joystick Ultimate Game of the Year. It's a fantastic list, and we do have a lot of high caliber titles. Games like Spider-Man 2, games like Alan Wake 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Final Fantasy 16, Diablo 4, Baldur's Gate 3, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Armored Core 6, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Mario Bros. Wonder from Nintendo themselves, Street Fighter 6, Metroid Prime Remastered, Hi-Fi Rush, Dead Space Remake, Sea of Stars, Lords of the Fallen, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Cocoon, Forza Motorsport. I think that's the full list. And the big winner was Baldur's Gate 3, which is not my cup of tea, but I know it's a very quality project. I do feel like the way that game came together, who it's made by, versus Nintendo and their Goliath Zelda franchise that last won upon its release in 2017, I kind of feel like Tears of the Kingdom is going to be punked. Washington Post games writer Gene Park had this to say after the Baldur's Gate 3 win. The, quote, Nintendo bias myth busted again. Zelda isn't going to be Game of the Year at the Game Awards either. If you pay attention at all to the critics, it was always going to be Baldur's Gate 3. And then the part that I really feel is illuminating and I personally take issue with. Zelda already got flowers in 2017's awards and selling 20 million freaking copies in 2023. No tears should be shed. Da-doom, Tears of the Kingdom pun. Okay, funny joke aside, just because Zelda won in 2017 and just because the game is super successful, it's eliminated from contention? Now, don't get me wrong, it's always impressive when a smaller studio makes an incredible game, especially one at the scale, size, and scope of Baldur's Gate 3. They both have that going for them. Massive games, right, that appeal supremely to their locked-in fan base. But when we're talking about Game of the Year, I don't think you get brownie points for your studio size, for your last win, for your story, the story of the studio, I mean, your development chops. I think all that matters is the final product. I think all that matters is the game. If we're truly talking about Game of the Year, we mean best Game of the Year, not coolest story that came together nicely and they really deserve it of the year. Maybe that sounds cold and heartless, but there's plenty of props to be given, and let's not make a mistake. Baldur's Gate 3 sold insanely well. It had massive Steam concurrence, so it's got its flowers as well. If we're going to say that Tears of the Kingdom has flowers because 20 million freaking copies sold, like, yes, that's great, but a sales figure changing the way Game of the Year is decided or voted feels very, very, very suspicious. It feels very unorganic. It feels very off to me. At the end of the day, do award shows really matter? No. If you love a game, you love a game, whether it gets crowned or not, whether it sells a bunch or not. A great game is fun and great for you because of your experience with it. That's totally true. But as a Nintendo mainstay here, I just find it odd that we're going to say, okay, well, Tears of the Kingdom is really great. Tears of the Kingdom is really innovative. That whole fusion system, mind-blowing. But, you know, Zelda already won. Nintendo always makes great things. I mean, look, they had 3 games coming out with over 90 Metacritic this year. Their first-party lineup is just killer. Even in the 7th year of a system, they somehow are innovating. let's give it elsewhere. You know, a game I love, Alan Wake 2, comes from a studio that really has had it, I'd say, tough. They've had a trying time getting their game to be mainstream. Alan Wake is beloved, but it really wasn't a huge seller. And even their follow-ups in Quantum Break and Control, like those games did well, but they weren't gangbusters like Zelda. Alan Wake 2 is taking insane creative risks. It is artistic as all heck. And I think the game and the story is phenomenal. It might even be my personal game of the year, but I don't think that just because Alan Wake was developed by Remedy and they're really cool and I've loved them before and they haven't won, that they should win. I don't think that that's the criteria or checklist for game of the year. In fact, I think all of that actually should be outside of the checklist. It's impossible for humans to leave some subjectiveness out, right? There's no true objective game of the year. There's no true objective 10 out of 10. There's no true objective anything when it comes to opinions, reviews, scores, and critique. But for something like this, game of the year, I don't think it should be your favorite game, the one you champion, the one you want to win. I think it should be the best game of the year. I mean, favorite game and best game, I guess, could be separate categories, and maybe that's actually what I should advocate for. 2 categories, best game of the year and favorite game of the year. I feel like some years those would line up, and other years they'd be dramatically different, right? Like Elden Ring, to me, was a lot of people's favorite game of the year. I don't know that it was the best game of the year. Hot take or not, like Baldur's Gate 3 might be a lot of people's favorite game of the year, but is it actually the best game of the year? And when you're voting for game of the year, what are you supposed to be voting for? Best favorite? That's why I feel like once we start bringing in all of these extra criteria, all of these extra caveats, oh, Zelda's already won, Nintendo always does good, they always get, you know, a lot of awards, they always get a lot of props, they always get a lot of praise, let's give it to somebody else. To me, that betrays the integrity of the award. And frankly, the Game Awards is already a show that I feel needs more integrity. It's full of commercials, lackluster reveals, and actor, actress, celebrity segments. The game of the year should be the game of the year. The game of the year should not be what people want to be the game of the year. Ultimately, I guess they're voting so they can vote however they want, but I don't know. I feel like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is going to get punked. I feel like Gene Park is right. You should be ready for Zelda to not really win much. It'll win Nintendo categories, but I always feel like the Nintendo category is silly, even more silly than the Xbox or the PlayStation category, primarily because the third-party AAA titles are not appearing on Switch. So it's just Nintendo. It's the best Nintendo game, which is like, okay, we can pretty obviously predict that every single year. So championing Tears of the Kingdom is the best Nintendo. Oh, that feels rough. That feels ugly. That feels like a real rotten third place prize that maybe you just shouldn't, like a participation trophy. That's what I'm getting at. I don't know what ultimately is the best game of the year. I don't know what ultimately is the favorite game of the year, but I do feel like we are running the risk this year of making choices that are really affected by our emotion and by strange analysis of an entire generation rather than this year. Are we talking about the best game that didn't win best game before? Is there a rule? Are there limits? Why would Zelda be punished for being great before and for selling 20 million copies? Should Baldur's Gate 3 win? Maybe. It seems like people love the heck out of that, and I can't deny its quality. Should Zelda have a fair shot? Absolutely. It absolutely should. And I don't want to see people writing it off just because it was good before, sold well, and everyone kind of knows it's good. If it's game of the year, make it game of the year. If it's really the best game of the year, that's it. That's your vote. You don't get to manipulate and twist and whine and zigzag your vote to better fit a narrative that's more fun to you. That's my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Tears of the Kingdom, I think it deserves more. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Love to hear from you. Until next time, though, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. SwitchForce, out.